Shalom, Kahalal Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, double honors unto the apostles of GMS who rule well, and salutations unto the elect, pushing the truth of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. This is just a quick lesson I was reading up on. I was watching a movie earlier called Crooked Arrows. It's a movie about lacrosse, which lacrosse is a game created by the Gadites, namely the so-called Iroquois, who are known as the Haudenosaunee. And in the movie, I watched the movie before, but I haven't watched it in a while, so I watched it again. When you watch the movie, in the community, you kind of see a lot of mixed people, right? And what I mean by that is you see Judah mixed in with Gad, and that is to a lot of people, that's a rare phenomenon, right? So-called Black Indians, right? But the history, it goes very deep, because the Gadites, really even prior to Judah, or the so-called black man, being enslaved in the Americas, North, Central, and South, they're already interacting with them, right? They're already in contact, right? The man that showed the French, I believe it was Jacques Cartier, in the 1500s, was Moore, right? Matthew da Costa. He showed them how to get here. When they came here, they came to the Micmac around Nova Scotia. And how did they communicate? It was Matthew da Costa that, broke that barrier, because he spoke Hebrew. And the Gadites spoke Hebrew. They spoke a broken dialect of Hebrew, but it was Hebrew nonetheless. Even amongst the various tribes today, it's still broken Hebrew, right? So the Gadites and the Issacharites, the Asherites, they're always in contact with the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, before even Esau came here, right? Before he was shown the way. But it goes further than that. Even during slavery, when Judah was enslaved by Esau, a lot of runaway slaves, they seek refuge amongst Native Americans, or so-called Native Americans, which are the Gadites, and also the so-called Seminole Indians, which according to the Bible they are from the tribe of Reubenites, right? They seek refuge among them, and they found it. All right. Today, you have, even among the Israelite so-called circle, you have people saying that the natives aren't Israelites, that the so-called Latinos, which are not Latinos, but that's their byword, they're not Israelites. So, you want to call them heathens, but they accepted a lot of jakes, man. And when Esau put his foot down, a lot of tribes wouldn't even let him go. Yes, there were tribes that put him in servitude, but there are laws in the Bible that deal with Hebrew servants, right? I believe it says 6 years he shall serve you, in the seventh he shall be let free. But it even says if the servant likes his master so much, there's a process that he has to go through. I believe he has to get branded or something to that effect, or an earring, and he's a servant for life. So without further ado, we're gonna get into it. Again, the title of this is straight up on Amazon. I just did a little, nothing too big, but the Spirit just made me do this lesson. Black Indians in the United States, down here, history, colonial America. I'm going to start from here. Okay, it says intermarriage. It's like so. Intermarriage between enslaved African and Native Americans began in the early 17th century in the coastal settlements. In 1622, Native Americans attempted to overrun the European colony of Jamestown, which they would have, but I believe there is a fucking what do you call it? A snake of the Gadites that warned the Edomites that they were going to kill them. It says they killed the Europeans, but brought the African slaves as captives back to their own communities, gradually integrating them. Interracial relationships occurred between African Americans and members of other tribes in the coastal states. And the coastal states were dealing with like the Pequot, the Narragansett, right? The Mohegans. There are many tribes, man. There are a lot of tribes there that got extinct because of this devil. A lot of families got extinct. Um, it says several colonial advertisements for runaway slaves made direct reference to the connections which Africans, Israelites we know, had in Native American communities. Reward notices in colonial newspapers now told of African slaves who ran off with his Indian wife or had kin family among the Indians, or is part Indian and speaks their language good. You see that? So why? And during this massacre, again, like it says, and if you read into it very in depth, which I have, it specifically states that they killed every single white person, but they literally left the slaves untouched, and not only untouched, they brought them back. So if these natives are heathens, right? If they're not Israelites, why would they do this? Which other nation, you want to talk about, use the example of, oh, they were just nice. Which other nation, Elam, Ishmael, Moab, Ammon, you know, not even going to mention Edom because that doesn't apply, but which other nation outside of Edom, that's a heathen nation, has done this, took in Israelites and adopted them from harsh persecution, and then when told you have to release them, they wouldn't. You know, but you guys, man, you can't add 1 + 1. Clearly. Colonists in South Carolina felt so concerned about the possible threat posed by the mixed African and Native American, and this shit was going on in Mexico. This same stuff, man. The indigenous people of Mexico, the slaves, the black slaves in Mexico, they mingled among them. They went in their villages, and that's why there were actually decrees and laws made for the two groups not to intermarry. Right? It happened in Florida with the Seminoles and the runaway slaves. Hence, you had the main reason for the Seminole Wars. You had 3 Seminole Wars, which was to this date one of the most costliest and wary American wars, hard fought wars, man. You know, because Reuben is a different kind of breed. It tells that in the scriptures, man. It says, right? They felt the threat posed by the mixed African and Native American population arising due to runaways that they passed a new law in 1725. The law stipulated a fine of 200 pounds for persons bringing a slave to the frontier regions. In 1751, South Carolina passed a law against holding Africans in proximity to Native Americans, which was deemed detrimental to the security of the colony, man. Because these devils knew, man, this is a reunification of the two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, man. It's very dangerous, right? You can have, like in the 60s, right, 70s, you had, Black Panthers, they were doing their thing. You had the Brown Beret, the Latinos, the Chicano movement. You had AIM, American Indian movement. All were very detrimental. Could you imagine if, well, we know those organizations, sooner or later, they're infiltrated by COINTELPRO, but let's say grassroots, let's say, right? Can you imagine if those real oppressed people, they actually got together, Chicanos, blacks, and Native Americans, man, Esau will be finished, man. He would just exterminate them because he couldn't have that. So that's what you had during this time right here. South Carolina under Governor James Glenn in office 1743 to 1756 promoted an official policy that aimed to create in Native Americans an aversion to African Americans in an attempt to thwart possible alliances between them. In 1726, the British governor of colonial New York extracted a promise from the Iroquois Confederacy to return all runaway slaves. Right? He so-called extracted a promise. He required the same from the Huron tribe in 1764 and from the Delaware tribe in 1765. Despite their agreements, the tribes never returned any escaped slaves. They continued to provide a safe refuge for escapees in 1763. You see that? So they never returned them, man. You know, and them tribes caught hell, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised. Even you know, the Iroquois, man, they had a lot of land. They were all the way. They were New York State, borderline Carolina. You know, South North Carolina, Georgia. They went all the way up here too. They were south of Lake Ontario and they were north. You know, they came up to Toronto. There's places right now in Toronto that are named after these tribes. You know, and what happened to the nation really? The Iroquois, which is five tribes, I believe. You know, they reach on upon a settlement, right? When they were fighting, they sided with the British and they were fighting the Americans in the Revolution. Of course, the British lost. So the Gadites, they were in enemy territory. So they made a deal with the British to get a nice piece of land up here in Ontario, right? Brantford, which is named after Joseph Brant, a Gadite. Um, and it was a lot of land, but basically it got fucked. You know, surprise, surprise. But a lot of their land is up here, but they're also in upstate New York, which that movie Crooked Arrows. It was based, I believe, in New York. All right, it wasn't up here. It was in America. They shot it, but the original land was in New York. Around that area, New York State. Not the city, but yeah, man, and they came up here. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's Judah mixed among them up here, which we went up here a couple years ago. But it's the res, man. There's no central points. You got to drive around, and you don't see too many people. There's a lot of houses spread out and shit. But I wouldn't be surprised, and especially in America, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Judah mixed with Gad. And Esau doesn't like that shit, man. And they actually had a case right now in Vancouver, maybe not Vancouver, but in British Columbia in the West, in Canada. This Jake is straight up, I think he was a Judite or maybe a Benjamite. No, he was a Levite. He was Haitian. And he grew up, a native family adopted him. I believe he was an orphan. And they grew him up, and he grew up like a Gadite basically, but he was a Levite. And he wanted to play on the basketball team, which was strictly for Gadites. But who rules? Who creates these laws? Who are you Native Americans? What law are you even abiding by? You're abiding in Canada under the Indian Act, imposed upon by the Crown, right? It's imposed upon by the Crown of Canada, going back to England, because England still rules Canada, contrary to popular belief. That's why you still have your central bank, the Bank of Canada. All right, as long as the money's controlled by that empire, man, you're not going anywhere. All right. So he was trying to play basketball, but they said no. You need to have a blood quantum, meaning you need to have a certain amount of Indian blood in you, right? Which is a good thing on the side of it keeps Edomites out to an extent, meaning white people, because a lot of crackers, they front, man, and they paid off back in the day to get that Indian status. Because an Indian status nowadays, man, really any time that go back 300-400 years ago, natives did not have a thing called Indian status cards, right? So just like when they would accept runaway slaves, right? Yeah, you didn't need a special card. Yes, this is John. He's a runaway. No, he grew up like he was. There were cases when runaways were actually became chiefs of whole tribes, man, right? Because they knew they were the same people. But back to the story of the Levite brother. Basically, he was denied, uh, you know, to play basketball because he didn't have any Indian blood in him. But he grew up with a native family that adopted him into the nation, and everyone accepted him, man. It wasn't like there was some racist shit by the Gadites. It's all by these crackers, man. because they go by according to the Indian Act, which is still in effect to this day, which is a racist, racist based document or doctrine, right? But now I believe it was lifted. You know, if you look up that story, it was lifted so he can play now. But it was a lot of problems. But what? Hold on, what about Edomites, man? What about these crackers that actually get like tax exemption? They might get a lot, whatever benefits that comes with it, man. You know, what about them? So back to this. Actually, I believe I was done. Oh no, right here, yeah. In 1763, during Pontiac's War, which is cheap Pontiac, a Detroit resident reported that Native Americans killed whites but were saving and caressing all the Negroes they take. He worried lest this might produce an insurrection. Chief Joseph Brandt's Mohawk, right, in New York, welcomed runaway slaves. And Joseph Brand, again, Brantford, Ontario is named after Joseph Brand, which is right by Six Nations, which was that land agreement that they made with the British after the British lost the American War, Revolutionary War, right? So again, Chief Joseph Brandt's Mohawk in New York welcomed runaway slaves and encouraged adoption of them into the tribe and intermarriage. So again, that's why when you watch that movie Crooker, you'll see some people, man, got not just curly hair, some got woolly hair, you know, which Gadites are a lot of them are dark as hell anyway, but I'm talking about the ones that look like straight up Judah. You know, there's a lot of mixture, man. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, man. You know, but because of colonialism and residential schools and all this shit, there probably is Gadites that look at that and they mock at it, they scoff, they laugh, you know, they're on some hatred towards Judah, which is part of prophecy. It's not a strange thing. It's a part of prophecy. This is part of the curses, you know, and they'll let Edomites right in, man, right? Matter of fact, we went to a powwow, I think last year, and there was a chick. She looked like straight up Judah, man, and she was dancing. You know, she was in the powwow with her regalia and everything. And I seen her twice because I went to a next powwow up in Toronto. And she was there too. You know, um, it says the Native American adoption system knew no color line. Carter G. Woodson's notion of an escape hatch from slavery proved correct. Native American villages welcomed fugitive slaves, and some served as stations on the Underground Railroad. That was really it. I didn't want to go too deep because there's a lot more I can read, but you brothers can read it. And Lord's will, I can go into it deeper. Just something the Spirit went into. But I got a couple scriptures. This is Isaiah 9:21. Manasseh Ephraim, and Ephraim Manasseh, and they together shall be against Judah. For all this, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. So Manasseh and Ephraim, Ephraim and Manasseh were basically twin brothers, and their father was Joseph, you know, which he was a tribe of Israel, but he didn't become a tribe of Israel, so to speak. When you hear the mention of Joseph in the Bible, like in Revelation 7, it mentions Joseph, it's really talking about Manasseh and Ephraim. And Manasseh was the firstborn, he was the eldest, and Ephraim was the youngest or the younger. But the blessing went upon Ephraim. In Genesis, it tells you Joseph's right hand went upon Ephraim. I believe one of his relatives said no, because he couldn't see. He said no, that's not your eldest son. Here's your eldest son Manasseh. But he said no, this is all in the spirit, because even though traditionally the blessing and the inheritance goes upon the firstborn, it was all through the spirit anyway, man. Because that's how Yahweh Shem Yahushua rolls. You know, he can do what he wants. He sets up things in the spirit, man. You know, the underdog and like Paul said, through weakness I'm made perfect and strong. You know, he likes that, man. He likes the underdog. You know, the hungry guy. right? So the blessing went upon Ephraim, so Ephraim is the head. But Manasseh is always included, man, because Manasseh was even one of the top warrior tribes, man. It was Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. All right, that's who it was. And Manasseh today is so-called Cubans, man. Them Cubans are tough as hell, man. I knew one guy. I know one person. He's a very skilled boxing coach, an elite boxing coach. And he told me, man, God never made anyone tougher on this planet than a Cuban. You know. And I've been to Cuba, man. I grew up with a Cuban. They're tough people, man. And when you look and when you see the mannerism and how they are, you know, one of my old coaches, he was Cuban. They're rough as hell, man. You know. And one of the guys told me that, you know, the thing that Mayweather does when he does the Philly shell, when he does the shoulder roll, right? He has his arm here, protect his body, and his left arm, or whichever. I don't know if he's orthodox or southpaw, but he keeps it here, right? So when the guy punches, he'll just do the shoulder roll. The guy will punch his shoulder, and then return. He'll give him the left. The guy told me that, hey, if Mayweather fought a Cuban and he did that shoulder roll, the first time the Cuban guy would have punched his shoulder, he wouldn't do that shoulder roll no more, because that's how powerful they are. It would have just bruised his shoulder, it would mess up his shoulder. So he wouldn't do that anymore. You know, so I can attest to that, because Cubans are very tough people, man. And when you see that, you can see and you can picture in your mind how they were warrior people in the ancient world, man. Those are one of the tribes you called upon. Hey, we're gonna go to war with Ammon or Edom or whoever, Amalek. You know, get Gad, Reuben, Manasseh. All right, we don't got to talk about Gad and Reuben because we already know. But the lesser known is Manasseh, right? Like I said, it's all prophecy. They together shall be against Judah, man. So Ephraim and Manasseh, they represent all the northern kingdom. Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, etc. Issachar, you know, and that's what it is. And when you show people this history, you know, nowadays it's like, oh, yeah, you know, Latinos and blacks, they're not cool. It's all prophecy. We're reading it right here. I got another one, Zechariah 11:14. Then I cut asunder mine other staff, even bands. What are bands? Right? That's a tightening. That's why it says in what is that, Psalms, about they broke their bands asunder, the heathen, Psalms 83 or 84. These are the nations. They broke us apart from tribe to tribe, and even within a tribe. Right? Then I cut asunder my other staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. So this is the Most High. He broke that brotherhood, but guess what? He's bringing it back, man. He's bringing it back to the elect, right? And to finish off, I got Zechariah 9:13. When I have bent Judah for me, right, filled the bow with Ephraim. So Judah, right? He's the bow, and Ephraim is the arrow. You know, and I remember years ago, man. Like I don't know if this was the first summer or the second summer that apostles started going on YouTube, not on the highways, on YouTube. I believe it was the first or second summer, man. I believe it was the second summer, right? There was chariots that came up to the camp, and the apostles filmed it, and it was a bow and arrow, and they brought out this scripture right here that I'm reading, right? When I've bent Judah for me, fill the bow with Ephraim, man. It was a bow and arrow, so the bow is Judah, and the arrow that you fill the bow in is Ephraim, right? And raised up thy sons, O Zion. So it's all coming back, man. It's all coming back. You got Issacharites, you got the Gadites, you got the Reubenites coming back, you got the Israelite foreigners coming back, whichever respective tribe they're from, right? Against thy sons, which sons? O Greece, and made thee as the sword of a mighty man. So against which sons? The Greeks. Who are the Greeks, man? The white man says, oh, the foundation of civilization is Greece, right? That's the foundation of Esau's civilization, because there was already great civilizations going on before Greece. Greecers came and adopted everything prior to them, you know? Because not too long ago, they were up in Mount Seir, growling and shit. And then they went back straight into the caves after, into in the Caucasus Mountains. You know, but again, this is an uprising, and it's happening spiritually, because we're not. This is not a carnal battle. This is a spiritual uprising. All right. So with that, I hope I didn't blabber too long. I hope you brothers edified. The main thing. Hope you brothers are fed. Again, this can go out days on end. This topic alone. And you can go into South America and Central America and the surrounding islands and witness the unity between these two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, during our downfall. All right, because it was present heavily. All right, now all this information is coming out. So with that, again, I want to say Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Tabyad, double honors unto the apostles of Great Millstone who rule well, and salutations unto the elect pushing the truth of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.